I've got an extremely exciting lineup for you, a day packed full of animal adaptations and climate change fighting innovations. And so before we get into that, let's just tell you quickly how you can interact with our session this afternoon. So if you look below the screen on our website, you will see that there is a Slido box. All the questions that I'm asking, you can put your answers in there and we'll be able to see them. And then when it comes to the end of the lesson and you want to ask your own questions, you can do that in there as well. Teachers, don't forget to check out all the additional resources that we have on the website. And please do tag us in any photos of everybody joining in with the live lesson because we love to see everyone getting involved. So it is now time for part 2 of Amazing Adaptation Day. And I am very, very excited. Oh yeah, the rain's getting heavier. I am very excited to be introducing you to very exciting guests. So first we have Dr. Harriet, the cow geneticist. Here, if you watched this morning's lesson, you will have met her this morning as well. And secondly, we have her amazing herd of belted Galloway cows. And so welcome, Dr. Harriet, welcome back. And thank you for joining us. Can you quickly tell us, for anyone who wasn't watching this morning, what is a cow geneticist and what do you do?
So I'm a scientist,
okay.
But I don't just sit in my lab just working by myself. I work an awful lot with farmers. And so what we're interested in is different science and technology that we can use to breed the very best cattle for our farms in the UK.
Amazing. And when you say the very best cattle, what do you mean?
Best can mean a variety of different things. So we have our beef and our dairy cattle. So we're very interested in them producing the best milk and the best beef that we can.
Yeah.
But also there's a lot of other aspects. So particularly we're interested in healthy, happy animals. So making sure that we breed cows that are going to live nice, happy, long lives. And also more and more we're interested in sustainability, which I think we'll talk a bit about later.
Amazing. And so we're going to be learning more about Dr. Harriet's role later on in the lesson. But let's now talk about the belted Galloways. They look a little bit different to what you might have seen before, what you might imagine when you think of a cow. Can you tell us why that is?
So there's actually over 1,000 different breeds of cow all over the world.
Wow.
And belted Galloways are just one breed.
Yes.
I think the breed that maybe you might have thought about when we talk about cows is usually something white with some black spots. Mm-hmm. That's actually, the breed is called a Holstein.
Yeah.
And they originate from Germany, but they're now all over the world. And they're really our dairy cow, our dairy specialist. They're really good at producing lots and lots of milk. So us as humans can have milk to drink. But these belties are quite different, partly because they're kept in a different way, but also because they're cows that we keep for beef. So our belty mothers here don't produce nearly as much milk as a Holstein would do. And instead, all of that milk, because they don't produce as much, we give to their calves, basically. So their calves can grow as big and as strong as they're able to do.
And different breeds are suited to different environments, different habitats. So for example, these belties here, they're really happy being out here in the rain and the cold, whereas those Holsteins that you were talking about, they wouldn't like it quite so much. They'd be okay for a while, but not all the time, would they?
Yeah, exactly. More and more farmers are keeping Holsteins out for as long as they can, but particularly on a day like today, a Holstein cow wouldn't be too happy outside. So normally they've got sheds they can go back to, especially in the winter.
Yeah, so they can stay warm. Okay. And so everybody, there's a scientific term for this suitability to different habitats. And I wonder, before I ask Dr. Harriet what it is, I wonder if you can have a go at defining it for me. Have a look at the question, tell me what you think in the word cloud, and I'll be back in 1 minute.
Well done, everyone. There's an awful lot of you that have put adaptation, and you've been exactly right. The term here is adaptation. Adaptation is all about when animals over many generations, over hundreds of years, become better and better suited to their environment or their habitat where they live. So these adaptations can involve a variety of different things. So everything from physical adaptation, so that's what an animal looks like, to also behavioural adaptation, so that's what the animal does, how it acts.
Amazing. And so can you tell us a little bit about how the Belties are adapted to their environment?
Yeah, there's a lot of adaptations our Belties have. It's really important when your cow's out living in the lovely British weather that they are well insulated, really.
Yeah.
So they have a special double coat. They have the outer guard hairs, which are waterproof. They make sure the water in all this rain just slicks straight off. And then underneath they have this undercoat, which is much fluffier and is really insulating. So it's a bit like wearing a nice woolly jumper to keep you warm.
Lovely.
So that's a kind of physical stuff, but behaviourally they also eat a wide variety of things. So they're not picky eaters like some other breeds of cows are a little bit more, they need really high quality food. Our Belties can survive out in the summer when our grass is growing well, they'll eat the grass and the plants in the fields, but particularly this time of year, they do an awful lot of browsing. So they'll eat our hedgerows, eat even bark off trees.
Oh wow, so they have a really varied diet as well.
Exactly.
Wow, amazing. How do we get animals that are so well adapted to their habitats?
Cows, just really like us, are all slightly different. They all have slightly different characteristics.
They're all unique.
Exactly. So, for example, in cattle, we have some cattle which have that thicker coat, and we'll have some that have a much finer coat. Some animals might have better muscling and some be slightly less muscled. And all of that difference that we see, scientists call variation. And variation is really important here because animals that have the characteristics that allow them to survive better in their habitat, in their environment, are the ones that survive and pass on their genes to the next generation. And that means over a period of time, many generations, hundreds of years, we'll end up with animals that are better and better adapted to their habitat.
And so there's another scientific term that we need here, isn't there?
Exactly, and the term is inheritance. Inheritance is all about passing on these characteristics to the next generation. So animals all have genetic information in their DNA, and that information really determines some of what they're like, some of their characteristics, and particularly how well adapted they are.
Yeah.
And that, through sexual reproduction, is passed on from both the mother and the father to the next generation. And that's how we see these characteristics passed on and adaptation improving over time.
And we actually today, very excitingly, had an example of inheritance in action when one of Dr. Harriet's Belties gave birth to a brand new Beltie calf, didn't they? So we're going to review some of the scientific terminology that we've just learned, because we've just covered quite a lot there. But before we do, let's just have a little recap and have a look at what happened this morning. Okay, Dr. Harriet, talk us through this calving diary.
So this was a little bit earlier. This is one of my cows, Bella, and you can see something quite exciting is happening here. She is just having a calf. So you can see him moving around there. He's a really strong, healthy calf, this one. She's just pushing him out. So there's a little bit of stuff on his back there. That's part of the afterbirth. So it's the sac that kept him safe when he was inside his mum. And also in a minute, we'll see the placenta come out as well. That's really important because it's all the nutrients from her to get across to him so that he can grow.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
There you go, there's the placenta.
Yeah.
So in a minute, she'll stand up and start licking him. It's a little while before she stands up. I think the next clip is a little while later.
Yeah.
So she'll stand up and start licking him. And that's really important because when she licks him, she gets all the afterbirth off him. It gets him nice and dry and clean. And that getting him clean is quite important so that he doesn't get any like nasty diseases or anything. Basically, just getting rid of some of those germs.
Yeah. Oh, we were so lucky to catch this. I'm so happy that we got it. So can you tell us how this links in with the terminology we've been learning?
Yeah, so actually this is a really nice example of inheritance. You can see that he looks quite similar to her. It's a bit difficult here because he's still got some of that afterbirth, but he's got the same markings. So he's black with a white belt, and he'll look really like her as he grows up, but not exactly the same.
Oh, so that's like the variation we talked about.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy we caught this. Okay, everybody, so now it's time to review some of the scientific terminology that Dr. Harriet has been teaching us. On your screen in a moment, you will see some of those terms that we've been learning and some examples of them in action. And your job is to have a chat about this in your classroom and see if you can match them up. Off you go. Great work, everybody. Well done for having a go at that question. So, Dr. Harriet, our next animal guest is going to be very exciting for you as well. Do you want to tell everybody why?
So although now I mostly work in the UK with British cattle, in the past when I was in my scientific work, I worked a lot in Africa, and they have very different breeds of cattle out in Africa because the conditions, the habitats are just so different. In particular, there's an awful lot of breeds of cattle in Africa that are Zebus. Zebus are very different to our Belties here,
Yes.
and I'm really excited to go over and see them and see how well adapted they are to African conditions.
Amazing. And so, everybody, when we heard about Zebus, because I'd never heard about them before until I met Dr. Harriet, I knew that we really wanted to include them because they're really, really cool. So we really wanted to include one in the live lesson. And even though there are only 17 of them in the whole of the UK, we've been able to track one down, and we're going to head over to Sparshot College right now and meet one. Let's go and have a look.
Hello everyone, I'm Jen and I'm here today live at Sparshot College with the lovely Sam, our Zebu expert, and some of only 17 Zebu in the whole of the UK. I feel so lucky to be here. So hi Sam,
Hello.
Welcome to Amazing Adaptation Day. Could you possibly tell us a little bit about your job here at Sparshot College?
Of course. Hello everyone, my name is Sam. I am one of the paddock keepers here at Sparshot. I look after the Zebus here, who are here now, as well as some of the other species that we have here at the college. I also help to educate the students on how to safely and carefully work around the hoof stock, as well as give them the best possible care that they deserve and need.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so now Sam and I have introduced ourselves, I think it's time to properly meet the Zebu. Could you tell us a little bit about the Zebu, please, Sam? I've never seen a cow look anything like this before.
Absolutely. So these are Zebu. They are dwarf Zebu, excuse me, thank you. They are dwarf Zebu. They are from Africa, Southeast Asia and India as well. The very warm, humid climate. They are were mainly bred for their meat production and their milk. But as popularity rose, they are very common in North America as pets on ranches and small holdings as well. Main prominent features you have are the hump that you can see on Ginny, the dewlap, which is hanging down the flap of skin that's underneath her neck, the lovely, lovely horns, and their tails are used for swatting flies.
Perfect, thank you. So now that you've had a little bit of information about the Zebu, we're going to set you your first Zebu challenge back at school. We're going to show you a word cloud again on the screen, and we're going to show you a list of Zebu features. We would like you to have a chat, maybe with your talk partner or your table group or even as a whole class, about why you think the Zebu might have adapted to have these features and how each feature might help the Zebu to survive in the hot, dry habitat that it's used to. Okay, everybody, off you go. Okay, welcome back everybody. Well done for having a go at that question. Sam, could you maybe talk us through some of those adaptations?
Absolutely. So the most prominent one that you may see is the hump on their back. Some people refer to them as camel cows. Basically, it is there so if they're in times of drought or anything, it helps them to survive as well because they obviously have extra energy and fat storage too.
Yeah.
Another one is their tails. You can see them kind of behind us. Their tails are used for swatting flies. So again, going back to where they're from, like arid, humid areas.
Lots of flies.
Exactly, lots of flies indeed, and especially in summer as well. There is a very good fly swat for them to keep themselves safe. Another thing is the flap of skin underneath their neck, which is called a dewlap, and that is to help with thermoregulation and controlling their body temperature. So again, I keep going back to it, but hot, arid areas is going to be very helpful. There are two actual possible reasons why they have the dewlap. Obviously, the first one is the thermoregulation. Second one is also potentially trying to find a mate. Obviously, the bigger the dewlap, the more impressive they are, and hopefully they might come across a female that finds that attractive and hopefully mate.
Amazing, thank you. So Sam, you've talked a little bit about thermoregulation.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that's going on here at Sparsholt that you do to help keep the zebu warm when it's so cold outside?
Yes, so we do. So one of the things that we do to help them in the colder months is something called a hotbed. And I don't know if you guys have heard of that before. A hotbed is basically where you put the feces underneath and then put the bedding back on top. And as you rotate it, or not rotate it, as you put more feces on top and more straw, the bacteria breaks it down, creating heat, which is very ideal for the younger ones and the older individuals in the herd.
Wow, thank you, Sam. Okay, so we do have one more treat for you here. I heard that something very special happened here at Sparsholt not that long ago. Isn't that right, Sam?
Yeah, indeed. Oh, sorry.
Could you tell us?
Yes, of course. So we had a birth here at Sparsholt, and we had Clover, who is behind us now.
Oh, baby Clover. So while we maybe get a little bit closer to Clover, if we can,
Yeah,
I'm going to set
absolutely.
you guys at school off on your second Zebu challenge. So we're going to give you a few moments to do this. There is a page called the Trivia Trials where you have a Venn diagram. We'd like you to think carefully about the two types of cattle that you've learned about so far today. We'd like to compare and contrast them and put the features of the Belties on the left, the features of the Zebu on the right, and any features that they both have in common go in the central interlocking section. Okay, everybody, good luck. Off you go. Look, everybody, here's baby Clover. She's absolutely gorgeous. She's very interested in this cabbage that I've got here. Could you tell us how long it takes for Zebus to be fully grown?
Absolutely. So it can take about 3 years to become fully mature and fully grown. She is almost there. As you can see, she's pretty much like the adults already. Just a few
Yeah.
more months and she should be nice and full and adult.
Yeah, she's not as little as I was expecting, actually.
No, exactly.
Could you tell us why her birth was maybe so important and so special here?
Yeah, absolutely. So any birth in the zoo is important. Zebu aren't classed as endangered, so even so, having her birth is important because of gene pools. So obviously, if we were to breed her here again, obviously that wouldn't work because her dad's here and her half uncle, if you like, is here as well. And so yeah, and having the gene pool is very helpful, so they don't cause like inbreeding and stuff like that. I'm trying to get a piece of cabbage out.
I think she'd like that.
Exactly. There you go. What's this? Good girl. So yeah, and having hopefully in the future we can potentially send her out either to another collection that has Zebu, or we can bring a male in and hopefully breed her, and she might have a calf or two of her own in the future, hopefully.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Sam. So I think maybe it might be worth mentioning a few of the courses that you have on offer here at Sparsholt, because there might be
Absolutely.
some very inspired children watching that might fancy coming here one day to do some learning.
Absolutely. So yeah, so here at Sparsholt we have a lot of land-based courses starting from college level up to university as well and even higher. So a lot of things such as agriculture, animal management. So if anyone here watching wants to do anything like that, Sparshot's the place.
Okay, that's it from me, Sam and the Zebu for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've learned a lot about the Zebu today. I know I certainly have. Thank you, Sam.
No worries.
We're going to send you back to Jenny and Dr. Harriet now, and we're going to hang out with Clover for a little bit longer. Bye, everybody.
Wow, I'm so happy that we were able to meet Clover. So, Dr. Harriet, back to animal adaptation. We've now understand how animal adaptation happens in the wild and in nature, but scientists like yourself also have a role to play in this as well, don't they? Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of what we've spoken about so far is more like natural selection. So this is all kind of, you might hear the term survival of the fittest, animals that are basically adapted to survive.
Yeah.
But we don't just want our animals to survive, we want other aspects as well. In particular, when it comes to farm animals, they've got a job to do. So our cattle in the UK, we have dairy cows or beef cows. So we can do selective breeding to make sure that we have animals that produce the best food possible.
Absolutely.
Just an example for our beef cattle here. It's very important with beef cattle that we want them to grow well so that they can produce a good amount of beef. When we come to kind of artificial selection, so this is selection done by humans, choosing traits that we want our animals to have, we might be interested in growth rates. When it comes to my work and the science that we do, what we do is we go out and we measure things. It's really important to measure what's going on so you know what your animals are actually like. And if we went out and weighed all of our cattle, we'd see that variation we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We have some animals that had grown really well, that were heavier, and some that were growing a little more slowly and maybe weighed a bit less. That variation is key when we want to carry out selective breeding. So how it works is you measure them all, see the variation, and pick the animals that have the characteristics that you want. So in my example here, we might choose the animals that had the best growth rates and pick those to breed the next generation. Importantly, when we're talking about breeding the next generation, this comes back to that idea of inheritance. So the calves should inherit those good growth traits and the good growth characteristics from their parents. And that means we can build on that generation after generation, year after year, to basically selectively breed the cattle that we want.
And it's not just the growth rates, is it? There's lots of other aspects and features that you want to breed into the cattle. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, exactly. So growth rates is all about beef production, and food production is really important. That's what our livestock is here to do. But it's not just that. A lot of scientists and farmers are working on other aspects of our livestock. In particular, animal welfare is a really key one. We
really
want our
important.
cattle to be healthy and happy. So one of the things we can measure is how long our animals live for. So there's a lot of work at the moment being done to breed cows that live long, healthy lives. And we can improve on that generation after generation, so our cattle are as healthy as they can possibly be. What's really great about that is if we breed animals that have much longer, healthier lives, that also has an impact on their sustainability. So actually cattle that live longer basically have a better carbon footprint than other types of cows.
And so they're just better for the environment as well.
Exactly.
So there are three reasons really. It's food production, sustainability, or how friendly they are to the environment, and then also animal welfare. So on the topic of sustainability, now let's head over to my friend Erin to learn about another project that's using selective breeding to help farmers become even more sustainable. Let's go and see.
Hello everybody, I'm Erin and I'm at the Rug Estate to meet Dr. Emma. Dr. Emma is an scientist behind an exciting project that's helping farmers, sheep farmers like myself, to be farming even more sustainably and to help combat climate change. Welcome, Dr. Emma, and can you tell us a little bit more about this exciting project?
So sheep play a really important part here in Wales. They have lots of important roles, and it's my team's job to help them be more sustainable for the future. So unlike humans, sheep are ruminants, which means they have 4 compartments to their stomach, including this part, which is called the rumen. The rumen is full of microorganisms, which include bacteria, fungi and protozoa, and this is known as the microbiome. And the microbiome break down this grass and they convert that into amino acids, which the sheep can use to grow and eventually produce those valuable products for meat, the healthy components of meat that we all enjoy. Some of these microorganisms produce a greenhouse gas called methane as a byproduct, which sheep burp out into the air, and over time this is broken down into carbon dioxide and used by plants for their growing cycle in a process called photosynthesis. So, however, too much greenhouse gas released into the atmosphere has negative environmental impacts, such as including the contribution to climate change. So every type of food production has an environmental impact, and livestock production is no different. Although UK agriculture only accounts for a very, very small proportion of the total greenhouse gases emitted in the UK, and the fact that English and Welsh lamb production is already 40% lower carbon footprint than the global average, sheep farmers like yourself are increasing and continuing to strive to produce the highest quality product that they can with the highest welfare standards in a climate friendly way, so we can all enjoy climate friendly food for the future.
And as farmers, we're aiming to be net zero, and net zero means that we get the balance between the amount of greenhouse gases that is released into the atmosphere and how much we can remove from the atmosphere. And as farmers, we're doing so many different techniques to try and be net zero.
Yes, that's right. So our project is called Breed for Change, and we're bringing together farmers, producers and industry leaders to work together to try and reduce the carbon footprint of lamb production and try and achieve that net zero. So this involves a process called selective breeding, which you learned earlier with Dr. Harriet, and we're trying to develop tools and use them to be able to select sheep that are productively efficient and that can produce the same, if not more, output with lower inputs, which reduces your carbon footprint.
That's amazing. So how does it work? How can we breed sheep that can help us combat climate change?
So we use this shiny trailer called a pack trailer or portable accumulation chamber, and sheep go into this trailer and chill for 50 minutes. And over that 50 minutes, the amount of methane that they burp out in that time is recorded and measured. And we also record the type of feed that they have before they go in, how long they're off grass for. And all this is then used within the calculations that we do, which helps us to be able to make it a fair test across them all. So some sheep produce less methane when they digest grass than others, and this is due to differences in how they digest their food. We DNA sample each sheep that's measured, so we know its family tree to be able to make links between how much methane that sheep produces, its performance and which family it comes from. And we are then able to develop tools to identify which sheep to breed from to produce generations of lamb which produce less methane. British farmers are really proud to produce some of the best welfare meat in the world and to the best quality, and we want to help produce that. So ultimately, as Breed for Change, we are trying to increase the sustainability, lower the carbon footprint whilst increasing your production efficiency, and these in turn can then help maintain the British countryside as we know it as well.
Amazing. So this is another example of how we can get the balance between producing nutritious and healthy food and also caring for the environment and combating climate change. And maybe you'll be a scientist one day, but I've just heard there's a ewe about to give birth on the farm in a field, and we've sent a cameraman over to try and get this clip. So let's have a look at this clip that the cameraman has sent through. Wow, what's happening here?
So as you can see, the ewe is starting to contract. You can see the stomach rising, and that pushes the lamb out. It's a smooth lambing, so the lamb's presented correctly, 2 legs first and the head, so there's no troubles lambing. And the lamb's just dropped.
Oh wow! Look at that, amazing!
So the mother's now licking it. That stimulates the lamb to breathe and clears all the afterbirth off as well. So in the wild, no predators would be then attracted to that to eat the lamb.
Hopefully, and its head's up already, isn't it?
Yeah, hopefully be up on its feet in a few minutes and getting that early colostrum.
I'm going to stay here and watch this lamb a little bit longer, hopefully to see it up on its feet. I'll send you back to Jenny.
Wow, everybody, I'm so happy that we were able to see that today. And I'm even happier that it stopped raining again. just in time for me to introduce you to our next expert speaker. It's Dr. Claudia, the plant physiologist. So we've been learning today about adaptation, inheritance and selective breeding in animals, but now we're going to learn about it in plants. So welcome, Dr. Claudia. Can you tell us, how does this work in plants, please?
Hi Jenny, thank you for coming here. Hi kids, welcome to the Berry Gardens Growers trial site. We are a growers cooperative for soft and stone fruit, and we want the best variety, the best fruit, you know, to give the light to our customers, our kids home.
Yes, absolutely. So you use selective breeding
Yes.
to get the very best varieties.
Yeah, so you want, for instance, you want a variety, in this case that we are in the blueberry tunnel, you will want a blueberry that is crunchy, but at the same time sweet, you know, and big as well, because you don't want like a very small thing, right?
No.
You want to enjoy a nice juicy blueberry
Absolutely.
and crunchy. So all these come from the selective breeding that someone before me, before here, did in their breeding programs, where they cross, like imagine they have this plant, this blueberry that have very big berries and this one that have very crunchy ones.
Yeah.
And they cross them together to have big berries and crunch, and then they grab that kid from them and
offspring.
and they cross it with one that is very sweet.
Yeah.
And then they will start having more seedlings, more babies, and they will start crossing all those seedlings that are interesting.
How long does it take?
Well, it can take up to 10 years.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
a long time, and a lot of science that's gone into
Yes, it is.
breeding those
Yeah,
really nice
and
blueberries.
lots of work goes into that. And the funniest thing is, even before what we know as science nowadays, you know, we were already doing this as the early farmers thousands of years ago.
Okay.
So, for instance, the kale, you know,
Yeah,
that you have
kale.
at home.
Yeah.
It's from there that came the broccoli, the cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all of that. So imagine this very ancient farmer.
Yeah.
He sees a kale and then he sees another one that have this different characteristic that makes like the flowers look like the cauliflower.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. And they start collecting the seed from there and crossing.
So you're telling me that all of those vegetables that you just said, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage,
Yeah.
they all came originally from a kale plant,
Yeah.
and they've just been selectively bred
Yeah.
over generations and
Yeah.
generations to produce all those different vegetables
Yes.
that we have. Wow, that's absolutely
You know,
amazing.
Bananas, for instance.
Yeah.
They used not to be like all this just the pulp like what we have.
Yeah.
They used to have lots of seeds inside. You could not eat.
Really?
Yes, and then someone decided to start breeding them.
So they bred them to get the seeds out, and then
Yeah.
eventually they've ended up with a variety that we have now.
Yes.
Wow. And so we're talking about all the ways that, all the traits that we want to see in the final fruit that we then sell to the customers. But there are other traits that you want to breed into your plants
Yes.
as well that scientists are working on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and that ties very well with all what you are talking about climate change, because I know
Absolutely.
you've been talking about climate change today. So you want a variety that will be resistant to all these changes that we are having nowadays. You know, is never the same every year nowadays because
Yeah.
of climate change.
Because of the extreme weather that we're
Yes,
getting.
so
Yeah.
you have as well, for instance, snow that comes like in March or April that we
yeah.
already have here in the last
Yeah.
few years. So all those things can affect the plants. So then you will want plants that will be bred for surviving to those conditions, that they can still strive and resist and will not impact in their yield. Yield is the amount of fruit you will pick from the plant, is what then the grower will sell, because you know they don't do this as a hobby.
No, they need to produce as much food as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, using as fewer plants as possible, I
Yes.
guess. Yeah.
And as well, you want to the plants to be resistant to pests and disease, because that will be responsible as well for losses in post-harvest, like after you pick.
But there's lots of other science and investigations going on here as well, isn't there? We've talked about selective breeding, but what is your role as a plant physiologist?
So my role as a plant physiologist is studying the plants as a whole, you know. is having this approach to the plant, not just the plant per se, but look what impacts the plant, external factors and as well their internal factors, and the combination of all.
So you're basically doing experiments all day long, investigations like we might do at school. Amazing. So we're now going to go and have a look at one of these investigations taking place. The way that Dr. Claudia explained it to me is this is just like a big outside lab with loads of investigations and loads of exciting discoveries being happening every day. So we're going to go in and learn a little bit more about one of those. But while we're doing that, what I'd like you to do is have a think about what are some of the external or internal features of a plant that plant physiologists like Dr. Claudia might like to investigate. Have a go, pop your ideas into the word cloud, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Brilliant answers, everybody. I can tell that there are some fantastic scientific brains watching today that will be a real benefit to the plant physiology world. So we're now standing in a live experiment, which is very exciting, a live investigation with these strawberry plants. So Dr. Claudia, what are we doing here? What's going on?
And now we are doing an agronomical trial. In this case, we are doing a density trial, that is how many plants can we put in a space. In this case is 1 meter bag, so this is 1 meter, each of these bags.
Okay, and so you're basically looking at how close together you can plant the plants and they'll still be happy and healthy. Okay, and so why is this so important?
So if you need to know what is the best density for the plant to grow. So if you have lots of plants, like a very high density, everything compact.
Yeah, so they're all squished together.
Yes, so, you know, now you see this is all very small. They are babies, as I like to
because it's
tell.
only spring, but in the summer it's going to get bushy, isn't it?
This will grow. If you come here like in the spring, it should be a big thing.
Yeah.
So imagine lots of plants in a meter with all these leaves. It will be a mess.
Yeah.
Plus, it will be all the moist will be inside.
So the moisture gets trapped between the leaves.
Because you don't have, you need the, you know, when it's very windy, don't you feel like you're getting drier? Your skin gets drier and stuff.
So you need the air to circulate through the leaves so that it doesn't get
dry.
And then why is it so important that it doesn't get too moist in between the leaves?
Because that's the perfect environment for diseases like botrytis, powdery mildew.
And that would make the plant unhealthy, wouldn't it?
Yes,
So you
and
need
the
to
fruit as
prevent
well.
that. Yeah.
So another thing is, if you have all those plants together, then you will imagine how messy it will be to find the fruit.
Absolutely. So it's
So you
harder
need to
for
go,
the pickers.
because this is all picked manually.
Yeah, so picked by hand, everybody. Wow.
So you know, the pickers will take long time. They will be like, oh, let me find.
Yeah.
And you don't want that, because that is a cost as well.
Yes.
The
you want
labor.
to be as efficient as possible.
Yes, you need to be fast.
And then I guess as well with sunlight, if they're all kind of on top of each other, the plants won't
will not have
the
enough.
leaves won't get as much light.
Yeah, and you want enough sunlight to go here in the crown of the plant.
And so how do you control this experiment? Because obviously in science it's really important to do a really good fair test. What are the controls that you have in place?
So in this case, because it's a density trial, we have the normal density in the growers that tends to be around 6 plants per meter.
So that's your control.
Yeah.
And you don't do anything
this
with
one,
that.
Yeah, this is it stays 6 plants per meter. So in the bag you have 6 holes and you put 6 plants. And then you have the different densities. In this case, you have 4 plants per meter, After that label, you have 5 plants per meter, and there is some that is as well 7 plants per meter.
So that's the variable that you're manipulating,
Yes,
that's the variable
it's
you're
just that
changing.
you manipulate. The
Yeah.
rest, everything is the same. So all of them, they are in these bags that have this compost that is made of cocoa fiber.
Yeah.
That is what we call coya, is inert, so doesn't bring nutrients to the plant. What brings nutrients is all through the drip irrigation. We decide what it goes. So
So you can control how much water and
yes,
nutrients each
goes.
plant gets.
And all of them will get the same because
keep it controlled.
we want all this. The only thing we want to change in this situation is the density.
The density, yeah.
And you know, they are in the same place, so same climate, same sunlight.
When you've done your investigation, what are you then going to measure at the end? What's your dependent
So
variable?
there is lots of things, but the most important thing is the number of berries you will have per plant, the yield.
The yield, yeah. And that's, I guess it links in with efficiency. You want to grow as much as possible in a small amount of space so you get the highest yield.
Yeah.
And that links in with sustainability, growing as much as possible with as little as possible.
Yes.
Wow, everybody, this has been a really interesting example of how all of the scientific methodology, all the working scientifically skills that you learn in your classroom, in your science lessons, are being used by real life scientists, real life doctors every day to solve real world problems and to help the agricultural industry become even more sustainable. Finding that balance between growing enough food for everybody and protecting the environment. And on the topic of sustainability, my friend Josh is currently in the kitchen with a food waste fighting super chef. So I'm going to send you over there to learn even more about that. Let's go.
Hello everyone, we're back in Tom, the food waste fighting super chef's kitchen this afternoon. If you haven't met Tom already, Tom, can you tell us why is it so important that everyone plays their part in fighting food waste?
Well, food waste is the most effective thing that we can do to help reduce our climate emissions, simply by eating all of the food that we buy. It's as simple as that.
So Tom, what are we making this afternoon?
Okay, so we are going to make a showstopper of a dish. It's a whole roast cauliflower cheese.
Oh, fantastic. And cauliflower, we know, is a great ingredient. Lots of antioxidants, lots of things that make us healthy and strong, as well as these delicious dairy ingredients that give us things like calcium, protein for a nice balanced meal.
And cauliflower is a seasonal hero of mine. It's available all winter long, and as you said, it's super nutritious, so something we should all be eating in its entirety. These leaves are also incredibly nutritious and delicious, so we're going to be leaving them on and roasting the whole cauliflower.
Fantastic, and that's one thing I've already learned from Tom that I didn't know before we started these lessons, that you can eat the leaves on a cauliflower.
Now, we're going to use a large sheet of baking paper.
Great.
That's going to trap in the steam and help our cauliflower cook and tenderize in the oven. So start by popping that in your roasting tin or pan. Top it with about 30 grams of butter, very nutritious.
Yeah, excellent.
And then I'm going to use some fresh nutmeg. Now this is optional, okay?
Yeah. Depends if you like nutmeg or not. And of course, nutmeg's the only non-British ingredient we've got going in here at the moment as well, so fantastic.
And then some sea salt. Nice. Do you want to wrap that up?
Yeah, am I doing like a folding? Am I twisting? Can I do what I want? Can I freestyle?
Wrap it up so it's going to steam inside.
Right, I'll give it a bit of a wrap. We'll kind of tuck it in.
Now, if you have a lid, pop that on top. And then we'll pop it in the oven at 190 degrees C fan for about an hour until it's fork tender.
Delicious. Right, let's get it in. And of course, if you're doing this at school, remember, you want to be asking your teacher to put that in the oven for you. It's going to be very hot down there.
Okay, so the cauliflower's in the oven, but you don't want to wait for an hour, so I've prepared one earlier. This has been roasting for an hour, and the important thing, let's take it literally, fork tender. So
Lovely.
can you see that?
Oh, that looks
So the cauliflower is tender all the way through. Now, because we've got all that lovely butter and flavouring from the nutmeg in there, I'm just going to baste the top, just to make sure that all the juices from the cauliflower and delicious buttery flavours are in the middle of the florets. Okay, so let's make our sauce.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to make a Mornay sauce. It's like a roux, but with cheese. So in a roux is a traditional French sauce made with butter, flour and milk.
Fantastic. 3 British ingredients you can get there, everyone.
And we're going to add cheese to it to make a Mornay or a cauliflower cheese.
Nice.
So I'm going to start by melting the butter on the hob. Okay, so we've got a really nice English cheddar from Somerset.
Fantastic.
I'm a whole food chef.
Yeah.
So I use things like the whole fruit or vegetable, like the cauliflower with its leaves. But I also use whole wheat flours and pastas and things like that because of the nutrition and flavour and actually the waste that you're saving.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, if you've watched some of our live lessons before, you might have seen when we visited a mill and we made chapati flour using the whole of the grain to make the flour.
Wow.
It was delicious.
That sounds incredible. Okay, so once our butter's melted, in goes our flour. And then give that a little bit of a stir. You want to see that close up really. And then we're going to cook that on the hob for a couple of minutes just to cook out the flour without burning it. So we're not browning it. We're just allowing it to cook out for a minute and it'll just bubble away. So we've got 500 ml of really good milk.
Yeah.
I'm using a good organic Guernsey whole cream milk.
Oh, nice,
so
really
it's
creamy, that Guernsey
full of
milk,
nutrition. Okay, so the flour's bubbling away. Just give that another minute. While that's cooking, I'm going to add a teaspoon of mustard. Or would you like to add a teaspoon of mustard for flavour?
Not too much mustard, people.
And it won't make the... It's not going to make the dish hot. It's just going to add some depth of flavour. Then I'm going to add half a teaspoon of turmeric.
Nice.
That's just going to really kind of bring out the yellow colour of the cheese and also add nutrition.
Yeah, lovely.
I'm going to add our milk.
Nice, get that full fat
Now
milk in there.
the trick with the milk is to add a little bit at a time. Otherwise it gets just lumpy and no one likes a lumpy sauce.
No.
Josh, please can you add the cheese?
Oh,
look at
my
look
favourite
at that
part.
beautiful
Look at that sauce,
consistency.
and then let's get that in.
Whack
Big
it all
load of
in.
cheese. Whoa.
So that's 150 grams. Look at that.
And you can smell the cheeses in there now as well.
Okay, so our sauce is ready. Next, we're going to make our breadcrumbs for our topping.
Nice. And why is bread such a good ingredient to talk about when we talk about food waste, Tom?
Bread is one of, if not the most wasted food item.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of energy to produce it as well.
Yeah.
So even a bread crust that we can save is a lot of energy saved and also really good nutritious food. So here's a slice that I dried out in our oven alongside the cauliflower. And that was a kind of stale slice of bread that we kept in the bread bin to use for a dish like this. Okay, so I'm gonna chuck this in the blender and turn it into crumbs so that we can top our cauliflower cheese with it. Okay, so now we're gonna assemble our cauliflower cheese. We don't want this to fall apart. Look at that. Gnarly, beautiful cauliflower.
Those leaves as well, I'm amazed. They look really appetising. I would not think that you could eat the outside of a cauliflower.
Now, can you pour that
I will.
onto our cauliflower cheese?
Look at that. Look at it.
Cover everything so it's all like cheesy and delicious. Well done.
Unbelievable. And we've got to make sure we don't waste any of that
Proper
sauce as
chef
well.
skills. Okay, then we're going to put more cheese on top. And then our breadcrumbs, which we've saved. I've got a variety of textures here. That's going to add some crunch to the dish. Okay, then to finish this off, I'm going to pop it in a really hot oven until it starts to bubble.
Okay, everybody, and we've got one a little bit earlier because we haven't got time to cook it now with our live lesson. And it smells phenomenal. Tom, let's get it out. Oh, yes.
Holy mackerel, look at that.
But Tom, just before we go, have you got any more tips for everyone watching about ways that they can reduce their food waste?
First and foremost, cook from what I call root to fruit. So use the whole ingredient. Once you have cooked, love your leftovers, store them in the fridge. They'll last for 3 to even 5 days. Then if you do have waste, make sure it goes in the compost if you're able to, because then it literally is no longer waste. It turns into soil, which then in turn grows more food.
While they're just getting ready in the studio, I've got one last challenge for you. Please can you think of some great questions, pop them in Slido, and thank you ever so much, Tom. I can't wait to get stuck into our last recipe here.
Nice one.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sending in all your amazing questions. We're running a little bit tight on time, so we're going to do a quick fire round with our amazing speaker, Dr. Harriet. So let's go. So the first one is from Valley Primary School. Thank you. How have cows changed from their early ancestors?
So cows are a domesticated species, but in the past we had wild cattle, and they were a species called aurochs. They were around a long time ago, and so we've changed them into cows through this process of domestication. And part of that is changing their DNA, so the kind of adaptation to living with humans. We've kept the friendliest aurochs and bred them, and then kept the friendliest calves and bred them till we've ended up with cattle. But also, our cows today are sort of born around humans. They're much more used to being around people, and that again means that they're friendlier.
So it's a little bit nature and nurture there.
Yeah, exactly, a bit of both.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so we've got Wimswold C of E Primary School. They would like to know, and this is a brilliant question, do you think it's possible for animals to adapt to living on a different planet?
That's a really, really
Isn't
cool
it?
question.
We could do
Well
a whole
done.
lesson on this.
So I'm thinking about our animals that we have here. So like our cows and our sheep, they need air to breathe. So just to kind of live in the first place. So maybe we'd have to choose a planet that had an atmosphere similar to Earth,
Yeah.
or have some kind of system where we could have an atmosphere that they could breathe. And then we'd need things for them to eat. So we'd have to be able to grow our plants on that planet to feed the animals as well. But that would be a really interesting discussion to maybe have in your classes at a later date.
Absolutely. We've got another one, which is also really good. With their adapted coats being so well insulating, how do these cows, the Belty cows, fare in the summer? For example, do they need to be shaved?
We don't shave our Belties. So sheep, some of you might know, in the summer we shear sheep to get rid of their thick coats so that they don't overheat. But with our Belties, actually that soft down undercoat molts out in the summer. So it all sort of falls out, and they're just left with the long hairs on the outside.
Yeah.
So that helps a little bit, keep them a bit cooler. But actually those long hairs, those insulating hairs, are quite good at insulating, as in stopping the heat to get to them. So even on a sunny day, it keeps the sun off. Saying that, on a really hot day, just like us humans, you'll find the cows in the field out under the trees, keeping in the shade to keep cool.
Absolutely. So do they need to have their nails trimmed like horses? That's a good one.
Oh, that's interesting. So really it depends on how they're being kept. So our Belties at home, we don't trim their hooves particularly. They're walking around on different types of ground, and it wears them down. It doesn't grow as quickly as horses' hooves do.
Yeah.
But for example, dairy cows that are fed a kind of richer diet, their hooves grow more quickly because of that richer diet. So you'll see dairy cows do have their feet trimmed.
They do, and we did a lesson on that last year actually, which is still on YouTube if you'd like to go and watch it. Why does the mummy cow eat the placenta? That's a good one.
Oh, so the placenta's got lots of nutrients, lots of really good stuff, and particularly after the mother cow has given birth, she needs all that goodness. She needs to eat it. So she eats it to get the goodness back in, and also it goes a little bit back to the wild days when they were aurochs. That placenta, the smell of it might attract predators. So eating it just cleans it up.
So Year 5 at St James and St John's School would like to know, how many calves can a cow give birth to at once? And someone else has asked, can they have twins?
Right, yeah, they can have twins. It's about as common as having twins in humans. So I off the top of my head, I feel like it's about 2 or 3% of births are twins. You can even get more than twins. So you see very occasionally cows having kind of quadruplets. That's four calves at once.
And okay, we've got time for a couple more. Why are there only 17 Zebus?
So people don't farm Zebu in the UK typically because we've got other breeds of cattle that are much better adapted for our conditions, things like the Belties.
Absolutely.
But if you go out to Africa, an awful lot of the farmers there have Zebu. So the Zebu mostly you see in the UK are more like collections and zoos for people to come and visit and learn about rather than actually to be farmed.
Yeah. And then finally, can anyone be a farmer? That's a great question.
I love that question so much. And yes, anyone can be a farmer. Anyone can get involved in farming. There's a huge variety of different careers out there, everything from being an actual livestock farmer, looking after cows and sheep, to looking after growing plants, like some of the other talks we've heard today. and then lots of other careers kind of around farming as well. So yeah, huge opportunities out there.
So many, yeah. And we've seen so many different opportunities today. Well, that's all we've got time for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to all of our speakers and obviously Dr. Harriet. Thank you for answering all of those questions. Don't forget to check out the website, teachers. There's lots of additional activities if you fancy having a go at those. And we're about to send you an email with the link to the feedback form. So we'd love to hear what you thought of the lessons. And that's all that's left to say, except we'll be back tomorrow with a fully Welsh language lesson for anyone who speaks Welsh. And thank you so much for joining us. Bye.